older and welcome into the Kiwi Football Fix. If you don't know what we do here by now, well, we shine a spotlight on everything New Zealand football, both here and abroad. Later in the show, we'll be joined by Fox Sports commentator and presenter Adam Peacock. He's going to run the rule over the Wellington Phoenix and whether or not they are a playoff team in this season's competition. But before we do that, let's welcome in the GM of the Wellington Phoenix. His name is David Dome. Domey, great to see you, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good to see you too, Goran. It's greetings here from Wollongong in the sunny Illawarra in New South Wales.
You've been there for 2.5 weeks, and then a couple of days ago you get the wonderful news that a travel bubble between Australia and New Zealand is opening up come April 19. Football fans like myself, all of a sudden we're like, woohoo! In about 2 weeks we can probably see the Wellington Phoenix back on New Zealand soil. But I'm realistic about it. Can you put me in my place? Can you tell us what it means for Wellington Phoenix football fans back here in New Zealand?
Well, that's our plan, and that's the idea, is to try and get some games back in New Zealand. We've been working on it on the chance that a bubble would eventuate. There are obviously difficulties with the draw now. There are 4 games or rounds unscheduled at the end of the season, which the league is currently working on now, and we're hopeful that maybe at the end of this week, beginning of next week, we'll get some clarity on those. The issue, of course, is the risk associated going to New Zealand and a lockdown happening or an outbreak of COVID happening, and either New Zealand or all the Australian states go into lockdown. So there is a risk associated with that. So we're just working through that with the league now. And exactly what games is available to bring back to New Zealand, because there's also there is a massive fixture congestion now at the end of the season and trying to get it done before the end of June, which includes the grand final. So look, a lot to work through, but we want to get back. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, Domey, what are those conversations like with the A-League? Are they erring on the side of caution, or are they pushing for the Phoenix to return to New Zealand to have some home games?
Look, certainly back in a couple of weeks ago when I raised it with Gregor Rourke, he was very supportive, and he understood what the sacrifice the club had made. In fact, all the clubs do understand the sacrifice that Wellington Phoenix has made to ensure the league goes ahead this year. But I guess with the number of outbreaks over here and the way that the states have locked down when those outbreaks did occur, there is some risk associated with that, which we've got to be very, very careful about and at least go into this thing with our eyes open. And then, of course, we have 2 home games yet to be scheduled, one being Western United and one being Perth Glory. And the way that Western Australia handles outbreaks is completely different to the rest of the Australian states, and they're much, much more conservative. So all of this stuff has to be taken into account, and like I say, hopefully get some clarity in the next couple of days.
The financial implications or ramifications, obviously you guys have been without a home game for quite some time. In order to get the players back and fill a stadium, like what would that do for the Phoenix bottom line?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge, Goran. A decent crowd in New Zealand certainly does help pay some of the enormous costs of the relocation here to Wollongong. It's been a massive financial test on the club to execute the season with all the costs associated with relocating to a completely different country. So a decent crowd in Wellington would go a long way to closing some of that gap. There's no doubt about it.
A massive crowd is one thing, but then also servicing your loyal Wellington-based fans is another. So, I mean, what I'm trying to get at here, Domey, is it would be very tempting to put on a game at Eden Park and get a crowd of, say, 20, 25,000, but you may not get the same crowd at the Cape Town in Wellington, but that's where the fan base is primarily. So talk to me about the juggling act. What are the considerations around bringing a game back to Wellington or half filling a stadium at Eden Park in Auckland?
Oh, yeah, and that's spot on. That's always been, as you know, it's always been a juggling act for the Wellington Phoenix as to how we can remain financially viable while still being loyal to our core supporters. There's no doubt about it that Wellington is our #1 priority. So if there is a game in New Zealand, we'll go to Wellington first. If there is 2 games, then we'll have a look at a second venue, maybe at Eden Park, if the schedules work. I've already talked to both Shane at Sky Stadium and, of course, Nick at Eden Park as well. There are some logistics around Sky Stadium, which means there's really only 1 date available for us in Wellington. If we have 2 dates, then we probably have no option but to go to Eden Park anyway. It's the way it turns out. But again, it'll come down to how many games we can actually bring back to New Zealand. If there is one game, then at this stage, I'd strongly suggest it would be based in Wellington. And because that's the way, like you say, that's where our home core support is. It's also important to note that we have our corporate obligations to our New Zealand partners as well. So one of the reasons to get back is to be able to give something back to our corporate partners who have stood by us through this season. But you're absolutely right. If we go back, then Wellington is our first choice. That's our home, and we'd look to play that game there.
And just so we know, and I can put a circle around a date in the calendar, what would be the date for that Wellington fixture should the Phoenix return?
We actually don't know, Goran. This is the issue at the moment. Because those last 4 rounds in the league haven't been scheduled yet, and obviously the implications not just on Wellington, but all the other clubs involved in the A-League as to how they play out and the way they get scheduled. At the moment, we're looking at, and the most likely occurrence is that we would come back to Wellington towards the end of May. So the mid-May, end of May weekend fixtures. It could be a Friday night, could be a Saturday night, could be a Sunday afternoon. We don't know. Those are the dates that we're working to with the league. Now, having said that, the whole thing could change again depending on what the draw spits out coming out of the computer in the next 2 or 3 days as to whether we do that or whether it's the weekend before or weekend after. So, but that's our current thinking. But, like I say, potentially at the end of this week, early next week, we'll get something closer.
And I wonder what this actually means for somebody like Ufuk Talay, because he's been in the news. People are wondering, is he going to stay with the Knicks? Is he going to go? Melbourne Victory's been touted as a possible destination for Mr. Talay. Are you able to share with us any information at all regarding Ufi's contract situation with the Knicks today?
Obviously, it's not my place to comment on the status of his contract negotiations. He's having those contract negotiations with Rob Morrison, Chairman direct, and all I know is that those conversations are ongoing.
David Dome, thanks so much for your time today on the Kiwi Football Fix and sharing with us some pretty positive news about getting Phoenix action back on New Zealand shores. Thanks so much, mate.
Thanks, Guy. No problems.
And now, staying in Australia, we welcome to the Kiwi Football Fix Fox Sports commentator, presenter Adam Peacock. And the reason we're bringing in an Australian to talk about the Wellington Phoenix is because he's seen a lot of the games. He's commentated on a lot of their fixtures this season. And we want to know about the Phoenix's chances when it comes to playoffs football, because they lost to Melbourne City a couple of nights ago 3-2. That, coupled with the fact that last night Sydney FC beat Perth Glory 1-0, it means that the gap between the Knicks in 10th and Western Sydney Wanderers in 6th is now 9 points. Is that insurmountable? Let's find out. Let's welcome him in. Adam Peacock, great to see you. Thanks for joining the show.
No problem, Goran. Good to chat.
Mate, so let's look at this. As I say, they are adrift of the playoff spots by quite some distance. Is this Wellington Phoenix side a playoff side, in your opinion, this season?
Well, they play finals calibre football. They do play the style of football that lends itself to want you to watch them more. They're really entertaining to watch. But unfortunately, sometimes this season, that's proven their downfall when they've been in matches and then they just let in a set-piece goal out of nowhere or get hit on transition out of nowhere, and they dominate a game for 20 minutes and then the 20 to 25 mark is the other team and they capitalise on their chances. So they'd be so frustrating to coach. They're probably frustrated playing group as well, because they know they're better than what the ladder tells us. And I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to a Kiwi football show. I'm actually saying it because I've watched a lot of Wellington this year. I've been to Wollongong a few times and I just can't quite work out why they're 10th. And it's a bit like the start of last season when they weren't getting results, but they were playing good football. Eventually it came good and they got the results. Just this time it hasn't quite worked out that way. So
with all of your knowledge, you've seen them play a bunch of times. What is the crux of the issue? Is it easy enough to just pinpoint the defence?
I think early it was the fact that it was chopping and changing. So Alex Rufer copped that ridiculous suspension. David Ball copped his suspension. There were injuries. Piscopo was late coming back. Hamed took a while to get going. And they had to kind of tinker and find a way using a lot of players. And it wasn't a squad. It's probably the squad with the least amount of players all told, which is fair enough given the situation that they find themselves in over there in Wollongong as opposed to being at home. That set them back. And then just in games, it was weird because their initial victories came off the back of their worst performances. I remember one at Central Coast where the Mariners were the better side, but Wellington got all 3 points. There was another one up in Newcastle where they got away with 3 points. So, yeah, it's hard to exactly pinpoint. It's hard to say blame the tactics when you look at it and you go, well, they play such good football and they create so many good chances. I think De Villa is nullified a lot. I think he leads the league in block shots. So he's not getting himself into the clear-cut scoring areas to able to capitalise them as much as everyone perhaps wants to. He pulls the trigger maybe a bit too quick, but that sometimes isn't his fault because where are the runners off him? So all these little mitigating factors, and then Luke De Vere going out. They've got Stephen Taylor back, but just it seems like it's one thing after another for the Knicks. It's just little things, but they count in the end.
So if you had to lay your reputation on the line, would you say that they are going to be in the top 6 at season's end?
Firstly, I don't care about my reputation, whatever the reputation is. So I don't care if I lay on the line or anything. I don't even know if I have one. But I'd say they're going to battle now because of the fact that you mentioned at the top there, that gap between themselves and Western Sydney Wanderers is getting a little clear, if you know what I mean. There's a lot of clear air between the Knicks and 6, which is unfortunate because I'd love them to play finals football because I think they're as I said at the top, their style of football benefits everyone watching because you learn so much and it's very, very enjoyable.
Let's look at the Melbourne City loss, 3-2. The Phoenix came back once, they came back twice, but they couldn't do it in the end. So many shots from Melbourne City. Was there an air of inevitability about that result, knowing that Melbourne City are probably, arguably, the best team in the competition this year?
Yeah, they're, I think, the benchmark, especially, and you can say that with conviction after they beat the Mariners at home in a pretty convincing display, despite the fact that the Mariners have done so well and they're on top of the table. Melbourne City look to be the one. Now, they've got an issue going forward, just before I get back to the game the other night. The fact that it looks like the Socceroos are going to play a match when the finals are on, or play a series of matches when the finals are on for World Cup qualifiers. So they're going to be without Jamie McLaren, Andrew Naboot, maybe a few others. That's a huge loss for Melbourne City. So that opens it up for everyone else. But getting back to the original question about the game, it was one of the games of the season. Now, the Knicks have been involved, I reckon, in the top 5 games of the season. The Knicks have definitely been involved in 2 of them. The night against Western Sydney, that 3-3, where Tom Ahmed thought he scored the winner, and you guys probably thought so. And that game the other night, that was breathless. That was such high quality and of a high standard that you cop that as a grand final, you'd be happy. You'd be so happy because it was everything that both teams wanted to be. And it was just that Melbourne City, they created a lot of chances. And like Wellington, especially when you're chasing a game, they're going to allow that to happen because they do have that, first of all, attacking mindset. We want to be good with the ball. And, you see it even with like teams like Manchester City. Saw it this morning with Bayern Munich in the Champions League, that teams like that who want to have the ball, occasionally when it goes a little wrong, they can be smashed on the counter, and Melbourne City is so lethal at that. So, it was just a beautiful mix of styles, and it was so enjoyable, that game. It was great. Yeah,
but, I mean, for all the attacking flair that the Wellington Phoenix possess through Ulysses De Villa, their captain, they can get undone so quickly by their defence. And when you look at the way they conceded the 3 goals, it was Tim Payne being overpowered at a set-piece occasion for the umpteenth time this season. Not Tim Payne personally, but the Phoenix as a collective. I think the goal before half-time, it was a 3-on-2 in the Wellington Phoenix's favour, and they still found a way to concede. And then a cross coming in for the winner, Louis Fenton loses his man in the box. Pretty basic defending, Adam, and it just keeps on happening. How do you fix it?
The defending in the box, that's probably the Achilles heel of Italia, and I'm sure he's pointed it out to his team, and he's looked at everything to try and fix it, because you do get worried every time Wellington Phoenix concede a corner. It's like, who's going to take over here? Who's going to dominate? And you've got a very good goalkeeper who can do that in Ollie Saar, but sometimes the delivery of the ball means it has to be up to a defender to stick to his man. And Stephen Taylor missing in that respect has hurt the Knicks big style. I mean, McGing and Payne, or whether it's Laws when he's there as well, excellent with the ball, excellent playing out. And Tim Payne's one-on-one defending when the ball's on the deck is probably, I reckon, this season as good as I've as good as I've seen from any defender in the league. But when the ball's at head height, they have issues. And I don't think it can fix itself, because I haven't seen how it can fix itself, despite the fact that I'm sure the coaching staff and the playing group have worked on it big time on the training pitch.
Obviously, in the last couple of days, the New Zealand and Australian governments have spoken about this travel bubble, which will open in about a week and a half's time. What's the appetite like for the A-League and the 11 other clubs in the competition to come back to New Zealand and start playing fixtures towards the end of the season? Do you think that the appetite exists, or will they play it safe and remain in Australia?
I actually think that the APL, the mob that run the A-League now, I think they'll do everything they can to get Wellington a couple of home games. They've done more than enough, Wellington, to be able to come over here and do what they've done to keep this competition afloat with 12 teams, because it becomes a different thing if it's 11. They don't have the amount of games, and TV rights change. Yeah, I can't imagine that Greg O'Rourke and his crew will have any issues in trying to get, as long as we don't have any breakouts and then all of a sudden the bubble bursts and we can't get over there either side of the Tasman. I'd be amazed, I'd be shocked, and I'd be extremely angry if I'm from a Wellington perspective, if they're not falling over themselves to try and make this happen. The other clubs, they don't get a say. Too bad. If I reckon they want to try and get Perth Glory over there, but I think they've already played Perth, so to make it as difficult as possible, do what Newcastle have done and made them play in Coffs Harbour, which means 2 flights for Perth Glory, the World Travel team. But yeah, I think that they need to get them over there, play these games, give Wellington locals, Kiwi locals a look at their side this season. It's the least they can do, given what Wellington have done for the competition this season.
Hey, we've spoken about the deficiencies as we see them with the Phoenix, but it's not all bad. Let's talk about some of the positives now. Ulysses Davila, he's been fantastic in a beaten side. Ufuk Talay, he says that he is the best import in the A-League. Do you agree with that? And if not, or who's better?
Well, he's in the conversation. I find it hard to separate. Or put it this way, when you, like the lucky job that I've got, you go to a ground and you go, okay, well, who are the 2 teams playing? Team A, Team B. And then the next question you ask yourself is, who am I looking forward to seeing play today and call and have the privilege of describing how they play football? And I will say that Alessandro Diamante, Diego Castro, Milos Ninkovic and Uli Davila are all in the same category as you beauty. I get to watch these guys play today. And I can't really separate them. They each have their own characteristics. I would say that like Perth fans are so biased towards Castro. I would say that Ninkovic is now approaching the level of Thomas Broich in terms of best ever import in the A-League, because not only has he brought so much football-wise, but he's won a lot of things. Davila, Castro, Diamante can't quite put in that category just yet because they haven't won things. That, for me, is a defining factor. But, yeah, those 4, and Davila is very much in that conversation of the things that he can do with the football. Just love watching the guy play.
Hey, one of the things that makes Davila so good is when he's paired up with Reno Piscopo. Those guys are just creatively head and shoulders above anybody else at the Wellington Phoenix. Unfortunately, Reno wasn't available for the Melbourne City game, but what do you like about those 2 in combination?
Oh, they're brilliant, because Reno is good on the ball, very, very good on the ball, but better than Davila's better on the ball, but Reno's better running directly at players. And especially when he gets his top speed with the ball creates so much around him because he is so quick. He doesn't slow down on the ball. He's fantastic to watch in full flight. Some of those goals that he set up in games at Wynn Stadium this season that I've been calling are fantastic. He's good on the ball. He's neat in tight areas as well. I'd be worried if I'm a Wellington fan in some respects, is that he is such a valuable commodity in the A-League because he is so good. And he could walk literally into any side. So the Knicks need to tie him down with a good contract. Otherwise, I mean, he's a Melbourne boy. You look at that. If I'm a Melbourne Victory fan, sorry, I know I'm talking to not many Melbourne Victory fans here. But if I'm a Melbourne Victory fan, I'm looking at a guy like Reno Pescopo, who grew up in Melbourne, went over to Italy as a 14-year-old, and go, why isn't he playing for us? Because he would have grown up a Melbourne Victory fan before he went overseas. He's exactly the kind of player that we need. Local boy, wants to show off in front of his family and friends. He is so good. And if I'm David Dome and the crew running the Knicks, I'm sure I don't know what his contract situation is, but whatever it is, extend it, because you're going to get the most out of him in the next couple of years. And even if he becomes so good that he does a Libby Kakache and gets overseas offers, at least you're going to make some coin that way.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up about the contracting situation at the Knicks, because that is something that's a little shrouded. There's a dark cloud hanging over them. And I suppose it's mainly to do with Ufuk Talay and his future, because as a player, you're not going to want to sign on the dotted line or extend a contract when you don't know who the coach is moving forward. So what can you tell us about Ufuk Talay and his future at the Wellington Phoenix? Do you think that he will sign on again, or his being cagey means that he will go elsewhere?
Yeah, it's hard because there's a number of factors thrown in here. So he obviously had designs in making Wellington a force this season, but then he's had to come away last season, and he was on the verge of doing that. And then COVID hit, and then it became a bit difficult, and then they had the bubbles. And I think if no COVID, Wellington stay where they are, Ufuk Talay is probably very comfortable in that place, and they're talking about contract upgrades and maybe flicking them a bit more coin and a few more resources. Whereas now it's like, Melbourne Victory. They've had a crack at him. They had a crack at him last season. I understand they've had another crack at him this season when it's all gone behind the scenes. They've let Grant Brebner do what he can try and do with the squad, but they've asked about Ufuk Talay and they've asked about Tony Popovic. These questions, these inquiries are going to continue while there's a bit of uncertainty. So I don't know what the Wellington Phoenix do in terms of trying to tie Ufuk Talay down for an extended period of time, but it's really, really important because you can see that the guy knows what he's doing with his football club. They play the right kind of football. Circumstances have dictated that it's been a lot more difficult than it should have been in the last couple of seasons, especially this season. So he definitely deserves another crack at Wellington Phoenix. So, yeah, it's up to them now. Ufuk Talay's in a pretty good position because he can either go here, Wellington, or I reckon he could walk into Melbourne Victory if Victory's sorrow continues.
Hey, look, Adam, thanks so much for your time today. We'll wrap things up now with a preview of sorts. The Wellington Phoenix next game is up against Western United, complete with Mark Rudan and Andrew Durante. And over here, we love that rivalry. But is it even a thing anymore?
Oh, it is when you play in Wellington. That's when it becomes a little, has a little bit of spice sprinkled on top of it. And long may that continue. I love stuff like that, especially like the start of last season. Okay, the Knicks didn't get the result and Western United got the result. They walked off and they're all happy. But, yeah, Rude's copped it from the crowd. And, yeah, that's football. And that's what it needs to be. There needs to be the expression of passion. So, unfortunately, because they're playing over here, I don't think you'll get that as much. I do know that Ufuk Talay and also Mark Rudan are good mates, really good mates. They've known each other for a very long time. And I think Rude's actually worked with Ufuk with the under-17s. He was like an assistant under-20s with Australia. He was an assistant for a short period of time. So, yeah, he's got a good relationship. But what I do know about good mates in football, when they're managers, they love nothing more than beating each other. So there'll be a bit of chat, I reckon, on the sideline. And, it'll be a close game because Western United have got a couple of results. They haven't been spectacular in the way that they played, but Diamante's the key. Shut him down. Good things can happen for the Knicks. If he's allowed to do what he wants to do, trouble's going to brew.
And we are very much looking forward to that one Sunday night here on Sky Sports 7 in Sport. Well, Adam Peacock, thanks so much for your time today on the Kiwi Football Fix. I know you've got a bung back, so go and lie down or sit in your easy chair and recover. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing your voice again on Wellington Phoenix games before the end of the season. Thanks so much for your time today, mate.
Cheers, Goran. Have a good one.
My thanks to Adam Peacock and David Dome before him for appearing on today's episode of the Kiwi Football Fix. And just a reminder, 9 p.m. Sunday night is that Wellington Phoenix Western United fixture. Make sure you tune into that on Sky Sports 7 in Sports. All right. On behalf of everybody here at the Kiwi Football Fix, thanks very much for your time and we'll see you same time next week. Have a good one.